Pew Bibles, pages 1276 to 1277. What Jesus' followers must do. While Jesus' disciples were talking about what had happened, Jesus appeared and greeted them. They were frightened and terrified because they thought that they were seeing a ghost. But Jesus said, "Why are you so frightened? Why do you doubt? Look at my hands and my feet and see who I am. Touch me and find out for yourselves. Ghosts don't have flesh and bones, as you see I have." After Jesus said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. The disciples were so glad and amazed that they could not believe it. Jesus then asked them, "Do you have something to eat?" They gave him a piece of baked fish. He took it and ate it as they watched. Jesus said to them, "While I was still with you, I told you that everything written about me in the law of Moses, the books of the prophets, and the Psalms had to happen." Then he helped them understand the Scriptures. He told them, "The Scriptures say that the Messiah must suffer. Then 3 days later he will rise from death. They also say that all people of every nation must be told in my name to turn to God in order to be forgiven. So beginning in Jerusalem, you must tell everything that has happened."
I can't remember where I was exactly, but I made a statement: I'd rather teach than preach. Preaching is not what I like to do. I like teaching. And that's why, to me, reading the Bible and reading it over and over again, you glean new insights every time you read it. The one thing I wanted to point out in the beginning here is that the Gospel of Luke is quite different than the Gospel of John in the way they recount what happened after the disciples saw Jesus after the resurrection. In Luke, which we were reading today, the disciples are pretty much gathered together, and they see him, and he invites them to look at his hands and his feet. "Yeah, it's really me, all right." And they were kind of shocked. And wouldn't you be? Put yourself in their place. If you had a beloved teacher who was nailed on some piece of wood with nails all the way through his hands and feet, and who died, and then all of a sudden you see him again, wouldn't you be shocked? Could you really believe that? That is really a hard one to even imagine. In John is where you have the story of the doubting Thomas. Now, in John, what had happened, the other disciples were gathered together. I guess Thomas was somewhere else. He wasn't with them. And so they shared with him what they had experienced, and he just couldn't believe it. So he said to Jesus, when he finally did come face to face with him, "I want to see this. I want to touch this. I want to know it's real." And of course he did. And Jesus, of course, was very complimentary to people that could believe without seeing. I kind of would be a doubting Thomas, I have to admit. I'm looking at my life today now. I like to see for myself, are you sure it's really you and not somebody else? Because it's difficult, isn't it? But it was a miracle. When you're dead, you should not be coming alive, right? That would be a miracle. And the thing is, we have miracles every day, and so often we just don't see them as such. And what I hope to do now in the next few minutes is talk about some of the miracles that we experience in our own lives. And yeah, that is a miracle. Because by definition, a miracle is something that cannot be explained, all right, by science or philosophy or anything else. It happens, it's real, and it's just extraordinary. And it happens each and every day. How many of you remember the story on the news not long ago of the 13-year-old boy who fell into that drainage pipe and traveled over a mile? How did he breathe in there? How could he breathe? Because stuff was coming down on him, right? Forget breathing. Would you want to even breathe? Because all this junk was coming down. And he'd been actually in there a long time. And they found him. And he was really okay. They just went into he went to the hospital, they checked him out. Probably gave him some fluids to make sure that he had, there was enough fluid in his body, and sent him home. Like no big deal had happened. I have been witness in the hospital on my occasions when I've served as a chaplain, somebody dying. I mean, it was actually a doctor saying time of death, like 9:15 p.m. So they've done, they've checked the heart and everything, it stopped. And there would be a child who was just rushing as fast as possible to see their mother or father. I remember in one case it was a girl who was coming up from San Diego, and it was on a Saturday, and the traffic was horrible. And she tried so hard to get there. And I was there, I was present when the doctor declared her mother dead. And she ran down the hall. Oh, I want to see my mom. All of a sudden, you can't explain this by science. Mother woke up from the dead to say goodbye to her daughter. They had a few minutes with each other. And then mother finally succumbed to her death. Try to explain that by science. You can't even. And think of the people who've had broken relationships, spanning decades and decades and decades, and you'll say, oh, that will never happen. They will never get together. Usually siblings or children and their parents, and they don't like each other, and they're not talking to each other. They hate each other. They're jealous of each other. And Jesus walks into the life and says, I want you to be reconciled in my name. And the reconciliation takes place. That is a miracle, especially if you've been going on for like 40 decades and you, I mean 4 decades, not 40 decades, you'd be 400 years old. Just imagine what a miracle that is. How through Christ, they somehow got the word, and their hardened hearts, like the Pharaoh in Egypt, softened, and they recognized, this is my brother, this is my sister. We were all made in the image and likeness of God, and I forgive you. And they're reconciled. To me, that is a miracle, especially when it's gone on for such a long time. We know of many health miracles where people have had like stage 3+ cancer of some sort, and maybe there's a laying on of hands, and all of a sudden the cancer just stops growing. Now that shouldn't be, scientifically speaking, when you have cancer and it's really going there, it's really growing, it's expanding, it's taking over all the good cells, that should be the end of you. It should be, but not always, is it? How many of you have ever heard of cancer reversing itself? Yeah, it has happened. More than you would imagine. Or people who have, the doctor has said, I hope you have all of your paperwork in order, because you're not going to make it alive out of here. And maybe a day or two later, there they are, they're up, they're getting their clothes on, they're getting their bag packed, and off they go. And I've been witness to this myself, and some of you have too. Linda, remember your friend from your office?
I remember that.
That had the
Frank.
non-Hodgkin, what do they call it? Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah. Who was dying, not because of the lymphoma, but because of the chemo. He got all these different kinds of diseases because his body had nothing to fight with. And the doctor actually gave him his death sentence, didn't he?
Yeah.
2 days later, he was out of there.
He was back at work.
I thought it was
You
the
left
next
out
week.
the part where we went by and prayed for him and laid hands on him.
All of us.
Yeah, there were 8 of us laying on hands. But the thing is, for that to work, the recipient has to be open to it. If the recipient isn't open, and you're forcing yourself on somebody, it's like a brick wall. The energy that comes from God through you, okay, well, it just stops because the person isn't open to God's healing power. I want to use this story that we have today about Jesus and his disciples as an example that we are witnesses to countless miracles all the time. And sometimes we don't even realize it. That each and every day of our lives, we see accidents that the person is able to stop in time, which they shouldn't. They're going too fast, but somehow they're able to stop in time. I know I've seen people go to sleep in the car. And they're driving and they're so tired, and all of a sudden, just like a little voice says, "Wake up!" And they do, just in time. We're here, we're a community, and we are a miracle that we're still together, isn't it? And we should celebrate that. I want you to open your eyes this week and to see all the miracles around you. And may you feel blessed that we are disciples of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.